Welcome to my cooking show. Today I'm going to be breaking down all the different ways that you can die in the kitchen, more specifically by way of kitchen appliances. Some of these happen semi-regularly. Some of these have actually been used as execution methods, and some of these will require a little imagination because they are more hypothetical. By the end of this video, you will be an absolute treasure to have at your next dinner party or cooking class. My videos may be upsetting to some. Viewer discretion advised. What's your first guess of what the cause of death would be? Let's see if you get it right. First things first, these dish coffins are airtight. Once the door is locked, it's sealed, so whatever oxygen is in there is all that you get. While you're in there releasing blood-curdling screams between gulps of scalding water, you are also releasing carbon dioxide. Fun fact, on average, we produce about 2.3 pounds a day from breathing. This won't be your killer though, because there's something far more sinister and agonizing that will easily lap this in a race. Let's kick this hell right up a notch. You are curled and coiled up in this dark, tiny place. Your muscles are cramping and you're suffocating in imminent doom. Then you feel warm water kick up beneath you and trickle down onto you. At first, it's kind of nice, but within a few minutes, it starts to really nip at your skin. It's at least raining, so the level isn't rising, but as the streams gain in strength, you find it hard to protect your nostrils and mouth. Every few moments, you inhale it, and it's starting to really burn your flesh, sinus cavities, and lungs. With every passing minute, the water heats up more and more until it reaches up to 170 degrees. You also have the pleasure of basically being steamed alive. It won't take long for your lips to puff up and sear. Any metal on your clothing will conduct the humid heat until it's constantly branding your skin. Your core temperature is rising until your tongue feels like a dried, crusty sponge. Your eyes will scream out in scorching agony. If Chinese water torture had a baby with a brazen bull, it would be this maddening hell. Considering that it can take a while to reach full heat, you would survive this for about 45 to 85 minutes. Hyperthermia would be your killer. This execution method was practiced most during Roman times. The unfortunate soul was forced into a large, often metal vessel that sat over a raging fire. It was sometimes filled with water, but if the executioner was feeling creative, various oils, animal fat, or even tar was used. To capitalize on the maximum misery, the person was actually brought to a boil. At first, it wouldn't be so bad. The slowly warming liquid would hug your body and even relax your very tensed muscles. Once the fluid reaches 110 degrees, you will feel a light sear along your first layer of skin. But with each passing second, it will intensify until reaching a maddening level. The proteins in your cells are slowly being destroyed. At 120, the steam will grow thicker, invading your lungs. The widespread burn is penetrating deeper. At 130, the pain has escalated to the sensation of hot sandpaper rubbing your skin raw. The damage is now down to your third layer of skin. You don't know it, but the capillaries near your surface are beginning to leak. Despite all of the fluid surrounding you, your mouth feels like a beach in the Arizona sun. At 150, you feel like a fire has now spread inside of your body. The scalding steam has damaged your lung tissue. Any attempt at a breath feels like inhaling acid. Also, your skin is now spitting, splitting, and oozing from widespread 4th-degree burns. At 160, hypoxia is a serious threat. The air around you has been hijacked by humidity and rising water. You're no longer getting enough oxygen to your organs. At 180, your muscles tighten and shrink from the prolonged heat. You can't fight it even if you wanted to. As your body seizes up, you slip under the near-boiling hell fluid. These lightweight appliances are wonderful for breakfast, but the truth is that the inside is a hellscape. If you were hypothetically smooshed inside and it turned on, you would endure a torturous end with a magnitude that is tough to grasp. A toaster uses infrared radiation to heat up, which can do some pretty grotesque things to the human body. Additionally, the interior has a lot of nichrome. Nichrome is an alloy that conducts heat and electricity like a heavyweight champ. I'm sure you've watched bread toast and noticed it glow red hot. That's because it's reaching an ambient temperature up to 500 degrees with the actual heating element reaching the thousands. As if that isn't enough to make you want to run, the electrical parts and wires are not insulated, which means that if you make contact, you'll be riding the lightning. Infrared radiation can be harmless in low doses, but inside of this death device, it would be catastrophic. For one thing, it will begin raising the internal temperature of your eye globes until they successfully bake themselves, more or less. The good news is that toasters only work in 4-minute cycles, except that's not good news at all because that's all it would take. Your flesh would sear and crisp, then spit, split, and ooze. Your lips would feel like they're being inflated with molten metal until they begin to erode and char. Your hair would melt, leaving your scalp vulnerable to deeply penetrating burns, and you would begin to smell parts of yourself toast and cook. But that's not all. Every single muscle in your body would seize up and you would experience an awful sensation like you are vomiting up your heart only to swallow it back down as the device dishes out electroshocks from hell. This can lead to cardiac arrest, but if it doesn't, it's the thermal injuries that will take you out. For a moment, let's pretend that jumbo human-sized microwaves exist. These contraptions work by emitting microwaves that cause water molecules to vibrate. That vibration produces enough heat to cook. The amount of time it would take to cause death will shock you, but first, you'll be overcome with a fuzzy sensation in your head. Your flesh will start to tingle as your eyesight blurs. Our eyes are made up of almost all water. As the molecules inside vibrate and produces heat, they will create a profound pressure. They will begin to feel like mini water balloons filled with heavy steam until your sight vanishes and your eyes rupture, releasing that steam and any remaining hot, watery goo. At the same time, a vicious cycle is creating misery elsewhere, everywhere, really. Surface blood vessels are popping and the heat is making you sweat. Since you're being cooked from the outside in, that sweat will eventually hit the boiling point long before your internal organs feel the assault. If we are dealing with the same power of a regular microwave, your flesh will be spitting, splitting, and oozing, and your eyes will be gone for a solid 15 minutes before you're dead. Your tongue will begin to feel like a 5-alarm fire, and the mucous membrane in your lips will begin to cook them. Eventually, the blood in your major vessels and arteries will heat up so much that it thickens and clumps, preventing the transport of oxygen. Any subcutaneous fat will render down and start frying any nearby tissue. Your most water-rich organs, like the lungs and kidney, will inflate and blow from the internal steam and pressure. Death can come from hyperthermia, lack of oxygen, or shock, and theoretically, it could take over 30 minutes. There have been real cases of this. Most recently, a man did it to himself in a large wok in front of an audience in a stunt gone terribly wrong. Also, back in the day, steaming and/or boiling was used as a precursor in skinning of live executions to tenderize the flesh. Water turns to vapor at 212 degrees Fahrenheit, but that doesn't mean that it's always that low. Steam generators can produce vapor at temperature 6 times that. As soon as you're locked inside of the hell sauna, every single nerve and pore will be assaulted by immediate scalding. Blink your eyes twice. That's how long it will take for every inch of exposed flesh to burn down to your second layer of skin. The best way to describe this pain is that it would be as if hundreds of thousands of wasps with molten stingers are getting you all at once. And it doesn't stop there. A few seconds more and the burns will be deep enough to destroy nerves. However, a deeper, more full-bodied agony will take root as it reaches your muscles. Now you're beginning to swell up like a balloon and you're oozing bodily fluids from, well, everywhere. Even your capillaries are beginning to leak. You gasp over and over wildly with extreme air hunger. It's instinct to attempt to get oxygen, and your brain isn't exactly firing on all cylinders at this moment. You can't even rationalize that there is no oxygen available to you. The foggy blankets of steam are thick, and more is coming at you with each passing second. You are in a steam tornado, so your organs are now operating on reserve. They will never again receive a new supply of oxygen. Just before you begin to violently convulse, you'll shriek out as your arms begin to raise and coil. Moisture is being sucked from your bones, joints, and muscles, causing your limbs to contort and contract. The suffering will be over in around 5 to 7 minutes when you fall unconscious just before death, brought on by lack of oxygen. Which do you think would be worse, dying in a fridge or a freezer? Well, in the fridge, you're the prize in a death race match between 3 different causes: hypothermia, positional asphyxiation, or just plain suffocation. A typical refrigerator is between 35 and 40 degrees, which rules out frostbite, but unfortunately, pain will be brought on by other factors. Even with the shelf removed, it's going to be a compressing squeeze. You'll have to be curled up tight with your head lowered, unable to move for hours. This in itself would make for a suitable torture method. You're extending numerous sensitive muscles, increasing the weight on your cervical spine, possibly compressing nerves and putting pressure on your diaphragm and lungs. Sure, you have just enough space to sneak baby breaths, but your chest is still restricted. It won't take long until you're consumed with the need for a real deep, clarifying breath. Speaking of air, you are on reserve. There's a limited amount inside of this frigid hell box. It's airtight, so what you have is all that you get. I would estimate it to be no more than 7 hours worth, but only if consumed wisely. That could be taken as good or bad news depending on perspective, because you'll be slowly, agonizingly freezing to death. Okay, that's a touch dramatic because it's technically above freezing, but it's still lowering your core temperature and bringing an ever so slowly crescendoing hypothermia. At least in a freezer, you'd be frozen toast in no more than an hour. Even without frostbite, you'll still feel the ironic burn. Your body will constrict blood flow to your limbs, fingers, and toes to divert it to your struggling organs. Your heart rate and respirations will initially speed up, only to slow way down. Your bladder will also begin to pulsate like it might explode everywhere because you're producing more urine. Death can take anywhere from 3 to the full 7 hours to arrive. Just imagine that you've been stuffed and locked in a preheating electrical oven. It's claustrophobic, stinks of eroding metal and burnt grease, and the only illumination comes from a tiny taunting window. For now, because you are sandwiched between two nickel heating elements that are slowly beginning to glow. Ready for the worst news? Even though this ninth circle of hell casket is only set to reach 400 degrees, those elements will cap out at over 1100. That low-pitched humming that you hear is a fan circulating that blistering heat around so that food, or in this case you, cooks evenly. In the first 2 minutes, your confusion transforms to denial and then panic as your lungs grow heavy and your palms and pits sweat. Your eyes water to compensate for the blowing desert-like heat and your throat yearns for a drink of cool, crisp water. By minute 4, your blood vessels have dilated to increase blood flow to your flesh in hopes of pushing out heat, but this will not help. It's 170 degrees now and all fluid near your surface is rapidly evaporating. That searing nickel is just inches away from the skin of your neck and scalp, and it's beginning to split, spit, and ooze as your nerves throw a monumental tantrum. You smell burning hair because it's actually beginning to melt. By minute 5, your sense of clarity is severely distorted, which does nothing to dull your systemic pain. Your muscles have seized up into one jumbo Charlie horse, and your flesh has full-thickness burns in some areas and second degree in others. It's those second-degree burns that makes you let out the loudest animalistic shrieks. Your nerves remain intact, which gives way to sensations that rivals a rusty molten axe severing the same spot over and over. Meanwhile, the third-degree wounds have given birth to a deep pulsating pressure, and your heart is beating erratically against your chest as if trying to escape. By minute 7, you are staring death in the face. The oven has reached 300 and you are at 108. You're experiencing frequent convulsions, your tongue and throat feels like a dried crispy sponge about to combust, and the tiny glands in your eyelids are beginning to melt. You will definitely be dead by minute 8. I have a feeling that many of you will be shocked to learn how long it would take to die. From the very moment that you enter the crackling 350-degree oil, you will meet a level of misery that you've never known before. There will be no treading at the surface because your movements from here on out will be strictly involuntary. In less than 2 blinks, every single millimeter of flesh will transform into one giant immersion burn. Unlike, say, a pizza oven burn, these are more uniform and escalate freaky fast. Your eyelids will more or less disintegrate and your flesh will look more like oozing muscle as the burning assault nears 3rd degree. This kind of pain simply cannot be topped. Within seconds, that hell oil will bring you to full-thickness burns and your nerves will begin to die. This will cause the sizzling searing to ease up a tad, but it won't feel like a break because, in the near immediate, your blood vessels will begin to cook. As they harden from heat exposure, your blood will coagulate. Once your muscles begin to bake, anyone nearby will smell the metallic, sweet, gamey aroma, almost like a bloody sausage. Moisture will be sucked out, causing your limbs to contort until you are permanently curled up into a pugilistic pose, which is similar to a boxer's stance. By the minute mark, your carotid artery will be crispy and well done. Now you have a major blockage and oxygen is no longer moving anywhere at all. The horror of fry oil is that it will hold in heat like a catsuit made of molten metal, preventing every fiber of your body from breathing. Let's not forget that you are also actively drowning, likely inadvertently welcoming that hell fluid down your gullet and into your lungs. That delicate tissue doesn't stand a chance. If you remain submerged, you will eventually cook the entire way through and might even burst into flames. You'll be long dead at that point, but expect to be alive for up to 3 minutes and conscious for a third of that.